Welcome to Hybris TV, and I'm Suresh Kochatal. Today we have with us a special guest who knows UK in and out, knows the UK media in and out, and of course is a proud Bharatiya, a Sanatani at that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pandit Satish Sharma.
And Jai Shri Ram Ji, Namaskar, and thank you so much for the chance.
I would like you to make a small introduction about yourself to our viewers so that they understand who you are and where you come from.
Humble beginnings. I was born in the Punjab a long time ago, probably earlier than most people can remember. Migrated to the United Kingdom in my early years, and I've been in the United Kingdom for the best part of 50 years now. So a large amount of my education and working life has been there. Parallel to that normal life, I was blessed to be part of a family where sadhana and shastra were a common thing. In fact, in the town where I grew up, it was commonplace that if a visiting Sant or Swami was in need of somewhere to go, Sharma ji ke ghar bhej do, was a common sort of a thing. So I grew up with the company of many of our wonderful Sants and Swamis and their Ashirwad. I've always had a deep personal interest in our Shastra and Sadhana and Sanskriti, and it has enabled me to create a little bit of a bridge between the two cultures, but also understand the two civilizations, the different stages where they're at. And where possible, we try and have a positive engagement, and where necessary, we try and stimulate a robust engagement, shall we say.
So I'll get straight into the subject, Sharmaji, because we don't have the luxury of taking you around for an hour because you have a kind of one after another studio hopping that's happening right now. So the question is, you are in town, you are in Hyderabad for screening of the documentary BBC on Trial. Straight to the subject, why should BBC be on trial?
So many areas, and the purpose of law is to protect the vulnerable and to maintain justice in society. And whenever somebody transgresses and creates injustice, creates friction, and I would say creates criminality, they need to be brought in front of the appropriate authorities, their actions judged, and then justice restored. The BBC is one of those entities which is so large that it can cause conflict, it can stimulate and incite passions, and it can seed hatred. And the evidence that we put forward in the documentary is that the BBC knowingly and with malicious intent has been involved in interfering in the internal affairs of a friendly democracy, and it's been doing this for a long period of time. The impact of it is normally felt long after it's left the scene, and so we felt that it was time to present the evidence to the wider people so they know exactly what's going on, that they wouldn't be vulnerable to some of the hate-mongering and, shall we say, fake news that the BBC seeds, but also then we can move towards judging them for what they are. They are not a good faith broadcaster. They have an agenda, and the agenda is not good for Bharat and Bharatiyas. So our hope is that by providing the evidence first in the public medium, then in the judicial space, we can move towards justice.
The question obviously that would come up is BBC biased only against India, against Modi, against Hindus, or do they have an agenda for different countries, as I say, different strokes for different folks? Is it that way, Panditji?
The BBC was established with a very clear agenda. It was not a stated agenda. The agenda was to maintain the capacity of the British establishment to extract resources, firstly openly, overtly, and then after 1947, covertly. That was the agenda of the British Broadcasting Corporation. So it is inherently biased against the renaissance of a Bharatiya identity. Imagine when a Bharatiya identity has been reborn and is fully connected with its civilizational trajectory. They are fearful that we will ask for justice, that we will demand reparations from a position of just and moral and ethical certitude. And so they're determined for that not to happen.
In fact, that's the most, usually BBC has been used by the British government, indirectly or directly, you can get that right, in terms of toppling of many governments.
Correct.
Okay, be it Iraq or the other countries, which including the Eastern Bloc countries at one time. But why would they be interested in toppling a regime in a friendly country like India, as you mentioned? Is it something to do with the inherent hate for Hinduism?
They have a fear of what Sanatan Dharma will do. Remember, the Euro-Christian empire is built on certain principles, and those principles have never been questioned in the Euro-Christian space. The population has accepted them as de facto truths, whereas Bharat has a totally different civilizational focus and a set of principles. If our principles become widely known, then the populations in the West will look at what they have been told as a truth and find it lacking. So the Western power structures, which are built on Euro-Christian ideologies, they know this will happen, and they're fearful of it happening. They do not want to see a renaissance in any of the former colonies. The thing about Bharat is we are an old civilization, and we still have civilizational integrity. We still have a connection with our indigenous roots, philosophies, our scriptures and our sites. And so we are probably the biggest threat. They haven't been able to dismember all of those ancient ties which are still driving us forward. So they're genuinely fearful of a renaissance happening in this country.
So when you equate Indians, you say, is there a similar race like that? We often talk about the Jews. They've been persecuted right from this time. And even now, they are faced up against a very persistent anti-Jewish campaign, pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah campaign, which the BBC is also accused of doing in different ways. It's not just BBC, it's you name the Western media, a whole lot of them, from Washington Post to New York Times to say CNN, everybody. Is there a kind of concerted attempt across the world, for example, to take on communities which don't agree to their philosophy, of the BBC's philosophy or their own?
They established a hegemony, a global hegemony, which gave them a great deal of comfort. It gave them a great deal of power and influence, so much so that they have created global institutions which are guiding human affairs. There are two nations which will threaten that, and both of the nations that I'm thinking of, they are non-expansionary in ideology. We resist the pressures to make us adhere to somebody else's idea of what we should be. The Jewish community are non-expansionary. We are non-expansionary. And so that gives the Abrahamists, in the same word as we have Islamists and so on, there are Abrahamists. It gives them a great deal of disturbed, shall we say, sleep. That's the commonality that I see. The Abrahamists have been trying to target the Jewish community for a long period of time, and our community, because we're creative. We look deeper into things. The number of Nobel Prize winners that have come out of the Jewish community leaves the vast majority of the Abrahamists far behind, and that makes them uncomfortable. We make them uncomfortable because we have civilizational superiority.
When you started making this documentary, and by the time you ended it, when I looked at the special screening yesterday, there was a huge amount of very good, solid research that went into it. I think each and every thing that was talked about was documented.
That's correct.
What is your feeling that if the BBC decides, for example, to sue you in the UK for whatever you did, you would, I mean, the UK laws are pretty strict about libel and all that, but you have the proof. Will BBC dare sue you in UK?
I don't think so. I think what will happen is that if they do engage, what we have created is toxic for them. If they engage with us, they will add their energy and momentum to the expansion of the awareness of this toxicity. I don't think they would want that to happen. I think they will hope that we are a mosquito and they are a hippopotamus, and that if we're ignored, we'll go away and no great harm will be done. But I think they're wrong.
Will you go away?
Why? We have sent them an invitation. We have invited them to engage with us. They rejected our invitations in the past, so we've created an invitation which I think they will recognize. I would welcome engagement with them.
Is this a start of a pro-India, pro-Hindu, pro-nationalist campaign that you've been taking up from a long time? But now, as we say, there is a kind of a system that is falling into place. Now, will BBC think twice before starting another 2023 like documentary on Narendra Modi?
I don't think they will think twice at all. The nature of the beast is such that it's always pushing forward. And we know from child experiences, bullies don't stop bullying until they feel there's a cost to their bullying. And we have to come together to make sure they understand there is a cost.
So when Beeb, as they're called,
Auntie Beeb.
Yeah, they've been playing around with, say, Yugoslavia, with Hungary, with the ex-Soviet blocs, everybody. Along the way, do you think that this is not just an India-specific campaign, or they are like this? They go after targets which are low-hanging fruits, WMDs in Iraq, for example, and similar things in other countries. Bringing down a Saddam Hussein or bringing down a Muammar Gaddafi, for them, is chicken feed, isn't it?
Correct.
But will Modi be a tough one to crack?
Modi is proving to be a tough one, but I think even more difficult for them to digest is that we have had 900 million people in successive elections express a democratic mandate. This has never happened in history. And so they are thinking, hang on a moment, this one person has become the catalyst for the cohesive expression of a civilizational voice. That is something that they don't know how to work with, and that is something they're struggling to try and break.
To bring you to something more recent,
Yeah.
President Trump faced the same allegations as Prime Minister Modi faced in the 2024. He's going to destroy the Constitution, how he's going to rewrite the Constitution. He's a fascist. Okay, you name anything, and there was almost a similarity with what Prime Minister Modi faced, including the media. So do you think coming up President Trump, and he's made it very clear, by the way, that he's going to kick this media, which he doesn't like, he's done it before. He's going to kick out all the guys who just walked into US. Immigration will be tough. Do you think Britain, because you stay in UK and you know the politics there, I mean, like nobody's business, you know at the back of your hand. But the boat people are just coming in. We love immigrants. Do you think now a time will come, your documentary, the BBC, and the sympathy for the so-called boat people will just now be pretty tough for the British government to deal with?
I think your analysis is 100%. The British people have had enough of people supposedly in power, paid from the public purse to look after their interests, completely relegating the interests of the man on the street to the bottom of the pile. There is no appetite for it. The British people themselves, the English, the Scottish and the Welsh, are actually wonderful people. They're really tolerant, and they're actually very willing to share and participate in a multicultural society. But they've gotten to the stage where the price that they're being asked to pay is something they can no longer afford to pay. The price the children are paying is no longer acceptable. The price the seniors are paying in not being able to access hospital resources is no longer acceptable. And so inevitably that pressure is going to go upwards towards the government. There will be a conflict because the government is now run by ideologues. They're not people who are monitoring and not accustomed to monitoring the mood of the people. They are people who know better, and they're going to fix everybody else to fit in with their ideology, and that has never worked well in Britain.
We've seen Goebbels, we've seen how he worked in the German armed machinery, so to speak of, during the Second World War.
Yeah.
We have MI6, MI5 and the rest of the stuff working. Is BBC a kind of a propaganda arm for the British intelligence?
The appearance of independence is one of the powers that the BBC needs in order to be able to infiltrate and influence the population in the UK, but also the population outside of the UK. So it will not be visible, but it's an accepted, understood reality that the desire of the establishment will be followed by the BBC without even having to give instructions. That relationship is there, it's in evidence, we have seen it time and time again, and we don't expect that to change.
Panditji, what is the next project of yours? If it's not confidential, may I ask you, or is it going to be something on a similar thread?
Decolonization of the Bharatiya identity is something that has to happen. And when we started the BBC project, it was with the understanding that the BBC has been broadcasting into our minds what we should be, what we should believe, how we should behave. And so by diminishing their capacity to do that, I'm hoping that the natural resurgence of the Bharati identity, its healing, its reintegration will happen. We have other projects we're intended to either support that healing or to prevent external agencies from harming that healing. So you will be seeing more projects in that space.
Pandit Satish Sharma ji, wonderful speaking to you. And I wish next time you're in Hyderabad, you should stay for a couple of days more so that we could have more extensive conversations about various things that you do, because people in Bharatiya community in India, I don't think are as much passionate about the Sanatana Dharma and others as much as you are sitting right there in UK.
Sureshi, I've had the opportunity of being outside of the forces that work on Bharat. I have been in an incubated safe space, and so I've had the luxury of developing clarity of vision, being able to see what's going on here. But thank you so much for the warm welcome. Hyderabad has been wonderful, and I have to say that the warmth with which I've been received, the message has been received, has given us so much energy. Thank you very much, Sureshi. A pleasure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Satish Sharma, Pandit Satish Sharma ji, as we popularly know him as. A nationalist to the heart, a Sanatani in every sense of the word, and of course, a fierce protector of everything that we in Bharat stand for. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.